Good morning, everybody. We're starting, Beth.
Okay, yeah.
I got
This
it.
is Okay, good.
Okay.
And this is the way it looked in 1999.
Okay.
Overbuilt.
Welcome to the far right. Good morning. This is the December 10th, 2015 meeting of the Historic Resources Board, City of Palo Alto. Would you please take roll?
Chair Kohler.
Here.
Vice Chair McKinnon.
Here.
Board Member Bernstein.
Here.
Board Member Ball.
Here.
Board Member Vandenberg.
Here?
Board Member DeZiquio.
Here.
Board Member Wimmer.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, that's very good. We're all here. Is there any oral communications? No?
No additional communications from staff.
Oh. Okay. Any agenda changes? No? Okay.
Well, we're currently copying over some images that we'd like to show to the board during the study session. So I wonder, it's taking a little bit of time. I wonder if the board would like to continue with any of the further agenda items further along on the agenda and then return to the study session.
Should we skip over to item 2 then for?
Sure.
Because we can always stop that. I think that's just between us.
Yes.
Okay. So we will.
Well, I apologize to interrupt. Looks like the copying just completed. So if you like, we could go ahead and start with the study session.
Okay. This is going to be a study session this morning for 1250 Bryant Street. Request by Gordana Pavlik on behalf of Huan Su for historic review of proposed new additions and facade alterations at the first and second stories of an existing two-story single-family residence and construction of a new one-story secondary dwelling in Professorville Historic District. Zoning District R1, single-family residential. CEQA, the application is not a, it's not a project yet, so that's what I guess you're saying, yeah.
Correct.
So this is a study session, so it's not an official project yet. Okay.
Well, just for clarification, this is it's an application that just requires building permits. It does not it doesn't qualify for a planning discretionary review, but per the ordinance, it does it is reviewed by the Historic Resources Board.
Okay, so it's I see.
So because there's no discretionary action required, it's not considered a CEQA project, and so CEQA review isn't required.
Okay. I see. So what we're going to see is going to be on the. Okay. So everyone turn on your monitors. Okay. So staff, I guess you'd like to go ahead and present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just present some background information on the property and the project. The property is located at 1250 Bryant, also addressed as 251 Embarcadero. And I'll refer you to the Sanborn maps that are at your places for a little discussion of the history of the project. The Sanborn map marked 1908, updated to 1919, shows the property on the corner lot with the triangular edge there. It is shown as a square plan house at that time. This is notable because it currently has 2 covered porches that were added at a later time, which we'll see in the next Sanborn map. But as originally constructed, approximately in 1908 and up until approximately 1919, it was in the form that we see it in this image, which is essentially a 2-story square plan with a 1-story wing that was attached to it. So if we turn the page over to the next map, which is marked December 1924, we'll see the same property, but we'll see that a 2-story porch has been added on the Embarcadero side, And that two-story porch involves a one-story covered porch and a second-story sleeping porch. And we can also see that on the Bryant side, another porch has been added, first-story porch, as well as an automobile garage at the bottom of the property. So those are early historic additions that are obvious. And then the next map, which is updated to 1949, shows the property in the upper right-hand corner of the page. And we can see at that time that essentially it's in the full condition that we see it today, where it has both covered porches and the sleeping porch on both sides, and the automobile garage.
And let's note that the earliest version of the addition on the back was a one-story, not a two-story, so that second story was added somewhere after 24.
Yes, thank you. So as we'll see in the pictures, there are two sleeping porches. One was added approximately 1920, and the other was added more towards the mid-century era. And what I'd like to do is just run through, okay. Well, we may not have access to those images. So I will refer you to, unfortunately, the black and white images, which you have in your packets for some information on the elevations of the house. The first picture shows the elevation from Bryant Street. And so what you can see is you can see the square, the original square massing of the house in the center. And to the right, you can see the first story wing that was essentially original to the house. And then we can see the second story sleeping porch with the curved roof, which might be seen as a little bit of Japanese architectural influence that was popular around that period of time. Turning that page over, you'll see that same facade, that same elevation, but in this perspective, you can actually see both of the sleeping porches on either side with the sloping roofs coming down off of the main roof. So this is just for everyone's clarification. This is the picture we're looking at here. So again, we see the square two-story mass of the original house in the center, and we see on either side the additions of first-story covered porches and second-story sleeping porches.
See there on each back.
The next photo, unfortunately, is probably not very useful. The next two photos after that show some close-ups of the sleeping porches that are in place, and actually this is the sleeping porch on the interior side of the property. And that's probably the most information we can glean from these black and white photographs, unfortunately. So the proposal, if we refer to the plans, so starting on sheet, let's actually start with sheet A8, excuse me, which is the roof plan. And I think it's important to understand that as originally designed, this house was very symmetrical, had a square plan with a pyramidal roof, and the original projecting bay was centered on the axis of that square plan roof. And that original bay is the one we see here at the bottom of the page. So we can see that all of the dormers and the projecting bays are clearly aligned with the central axes of that roof plan. In the proposed roof plan, we can see that that axial configuration is maintained. The original projecting bay, which is at the bottom of the diagram, is proposed to be enlarged, but to remain centered on the axis. And on the left side, a new bay is proposed to be added that would not actually be along the axis, but this is the elevation that already has an addition that's not configured along those axes. So that would reflect the offset nature of those additions. So essentially, the essential roof form would be maintained by the changes. If we move on to sheet A10, we'll see we can see that there's a pyramidal roof addition that's proposed at the second story. This would be the offset, the addition that's offset from the axial configuration of the main roof. And what's also proposed is that the sleeping porch, which is a later addition, is proposed to be reclad in shingle siding, wood shingle siding. In fact, both of the sleeping porches at the second story are proposed to be changed from stucco to wood shingle siding. And that is one thing that we'd like to, that the applicant would like to, and staff would like to get the board's feedback on in terms of the compatibility of that particular change. Moving on to sheet A10. Thank you. Oh, it's just on here. Okay. Okay. Sheet A10 shows the Bryant Street side, and this is the elevation that is shown in the first photograph that you have in your packet. And Ms. Gerhardt will actually...
They're not really numbered.
Yeah, unfortunately. So...
Double numbered?
This is the elevation here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So the proposal at this elevation is, again, to take both of the second-story sleeping porches, reclad them in wood shingles, and to do some minor window reconfiguration. And then we can see that on the right side, there's the original trim that marked the first-story addition is still in place between the first-story addition and the second-story sleeping porch. And that trim is proposed to be replaced with a flat trim that will tie in with the fascia that's underneath the eaves, but would retain the demarcation of that historic addition. So again, that's something that we would ask the board to comment on in terms of replacing that trim with a different type of trim that does appear to be compatible. Moving on to sheet A11, this is the Embarcadero side, or Embarcadero facade. And this is a facade that is very difficult to view. So the proposal here, again, is we see the second-story sleeping porch being reclad in wood shingle. We see divided lights being added to the first-story porch, covered porch. So 1/1 double hung being replaced by 8/1 double hung windows, only in this particular location. So again, the focus is on these projecting bays and on the additions and making them more distinguishable as additions in terms of the original structure. Moving on to sheet A12. This is a side elevation facing another residential property, and the proposal here is to retain the brick chimney in place. Actually, I'm sorry, to move the brick chimney slightly forward on the elevation in order to accommodate an expansion of this projecting bay. as well as an addition of another small projecting bay on the left side, and some window and door replacement that all appears to be compatible with the standards.
I don't know if that helps.
And lastly, final elevation, or not the final elevation, but yes, it is the final elevation. Sheet A13 shows a proposed new secondary dwelling unit, which would be located on the property. And we can refer to the site plan and see that it would be located between the existing house and the adjacent residential house on the property. And we can note that currently the proposal is to clad this dwelling unit in stucco, which would actually match the existing residence, the main residence, as well as the existing garage. So the question that we might ask the board is, would it make sense to distinguish the secondary dwelling unit with a different type of siding material, such as wood shingles, in order to differentiate it from the historical structures? In other words, this house was not constructed at the same time as the historical building, so perhaps a different siding is in order, or perhaps some other way to differentiate their origins. And last, sheet A14 shows the replacement garage. The existing one-story garage is proposed to be replaced with a new garage that would be located at the back of the lot.
Kind of like the redwood tree.
So in summary, and as indicated in the staff report, staff has reviewed all the items that are proposed and generally found the project to be consistent with the standards, with some areas that may or may not be entirely consistent. And I'll just reiterate what those areas are. The proposal to introduce divided lights to the first-story covered porch on the Embarcadero side, the proposal to introduce wood shingle siding to the second-story sleeping porches, and what would be an appropriate, compatible yet differentiated appearance or design for the secondary dwelling unit. Those are the three primary issues that staff has identified, in addition to any other areas that the HRB may want to comment on. Thank you. And the applicant is here also to answer any questions or present any information that the board may wish to know about.
Let's see.
Go ahead, Pat.
Questions for staff or what?
I guess, sure. Questions is fine.
Questions first.
Yes.
I did have a question. Did I miss it when you talked about the porch that's near what I would consider the front porch, with the sleeping on top, that they are moving the entrance to the Bryant Street side from what I would consider the closer to the Embarcadero neighbors down the street?
Thank you. I did overlook that. An important component of the project is on the Embarcadero elevation. There's a covered porch that's currently side-facing. It's a side-facing porch, so it's in the center of the elevation. It's let's see, sheet A11. So it's the central bay, and currently the entrance, the stairs are on the left side of that porch, and they enter into the porch, and the proposal is actually to reverse that configuration, to move the stairs to the right side, so that it's essentially the same design, just in mirror image. So instead of left facing, it would be right facing, and this would accomplish a couple things. It would, when the house was originally built, it was on a much larger lot, and since that time, other residential developments and subdivisions have occurred, such that this main entrance on Embarcadero actually faces towards other residential properties rather than towards the street, such as facing Bryant. And so the idea is to have this entrance move so it's facing Bryant Street, which is a more normal orientation, I think, for a residential property. So, so the actual architectural design won't change, except there will be a reversal of, or a mirror image of this particular, the porch entrance.
David?
Matt, I'm looking at page A3, and it's not identified as, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Is that an existing plan, or is that, it must be existing.
Yes, it is.
It is, yes.
So this is the existing first floor plan?
Yes.
Okay, and you're talking, you were just talking about the steps that come up to the house, and on the A3, those steps are in the lower right-hand corner coming up to a little porch.
Yes.
And then there's a covered entry, and they go into the entry. And then, I guess we go to A5. So then those steps are now at the top right corner.
Yes.
Okay, just want to be clear. Thank you.
I mean, my general comment is that as David just the drawings aren't very clear. It doesn't clearly say what's new, what's existing. You know, you go from one page to another. There's no call out that this is being added onto. This is it's like a, you know, it's a real puzzle figuring out what's new, what isn't. Even the guest house plan doesn't say new guest house, it just says guest house. And so if you look at the page, it's a very confusing set of drawings. So I don't know if you have control over what gets done or not. But
So I believe what's presented in the drawings are for each particular facet, there's an existing and a proposed. So there's an existing roof plan, a proposed roof plan, there's an existing floor plan, proposed floor plan, there's an existing elevation and proposed elevation. And so I think comparing those two will provide the HRB with an understanding of what the changes are. And just to recap what the project is, it's to rehabilitate and add to the existing residence, to demolish and replace the existing garage, and to construct a new secondary dwelling unit.
okay. Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kohler. Matt, is there, I see on the cover sheet, is there, it just says Professorville for historic status. Is there any category 1, 2, 3, 4, or no?
There has not been a category assigned.
Okay, right.
This is located within the part of the district that is city designated but not National Register designated. So the National Register documentation doesn't exist for this part of the district, and so we don't actually have classifications of contributors versus non-contributors. It's staff's belief that this would qualify as a contributor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's about 100, at least 107 years old. Okay, thanks.
Well, let's see, anyone now this end first?
Yeah, is this the only time we're going to review this project? Is it, I know you mentioned something earlier about this is, it's just not a discretionary review, but would this come back after our comments today, or this is our only opportunity to comment?
To some extent, that's up to the board. We would like to get the board's input on whether or not what they're seeing today could represent close to a final design, and whether or not they want to provide some comments and then let staff work with the applicant to proceed with an approval, or if the HRB would like to see this project come back to them.
So it doesn't have to go through any further level of review beyond just
building.
our staff review?
Building permit?
So, true. So the process is, so this project is subject only to building permits, but the ordinance does require that the work be reviewed by the HRB. So this is the opportunity for the HRB to review that work and indicate whether or not they want to see further revisions or have it come back to them before the final processing.
Okay, Beth again.
This is really a comment. Now then, it seems to me that one of our questions as a board is whether the 1924 changes, and this is about the Secretary of Interior Standard number 4, have the 1924 changes to this house gained historic significance by this point? And is it important that some of the things that came in 1924 be preserved as they are, or whether, and again, that leads into whether the coordinating shingles are appropriate, and also whether the changes on that front porch, whether it's appropriate to use the divided lights or to keep the two just regular double hung windows, I think is what was originally there, and or may probably still are, according to the drawings. So I would, I think, figure that the shingles would be a good differentiation for the later construction, and maybe even extend that to the guest cottage. But I might like to see the original windows maintained on the Embarcadero fronting porch, even though they're shifted, flip-flopped in the design.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Let's,
Yeah, I'm a little confused, I think. But a couple of questions. I'm not quite sure. Is this decorative, like fencing, it almost looks like, is this going to be eliminated? And is this part of the one sleeping porch that's going to be extended?
Yes, thank you. That is one of the sleeping porches that's on the interior side of the property, and that would be replaced. And I can refer you to sheet A9.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are the shingles.
And this is the actual front of the building, and the front porch?
That would be the Bryant Street side, which was considered one of the street frontages. The actual front of the house might be considered Embarcadero, because that was the original
And that's the one where you're going to
address.
turn the porch.
Yes.
And then there was a photo that got passed around. Is the original front porch brick?
I
and
believe
brick
there are
steps?
brick steps.
And
Yes.
those are those original to the building?
Well, they're original to the porch, and the proposal is to retain and reuse as many of those bricks as possible, as well as much of the material in the porch as possible. And it certainly appears that that's feasible.
And then the sleeping porches, are those sliders?
Yes.
It sort of appears that they are.
Yes.
Instead of double hung, you know, you can't do that. And so they're going to use the original sliding windows in those porches. They're going to remain.
Yes, and the applicant can also address some of these questions, but the understanding is that on the interior second-story porch, that those windows would be reused in different locations. And on the Embarcadero side, those windows would be retained.
And
So,
does that
yes.
house have original wood gutters? No?
Yeah.
And it was originally, it was stucco, the whole house was, to start
Yes.
with? It wasn't stuccoed over?
No.
Yeah. Chair Kohler, since this is a study session, may we invite the applicant up so that we can have a conversation
I
with
was
him?
just
Yeah,
thinking the
great.
same thing.
Thank you.
Well, she is at the microphone at the moment, so could you please state your name and address?
Good morning. My name is Gordana Pavlovic. I live at 602 Hawthorne Avenue, Palo Alto, downtown North. And the project that we are addressing today has originally been at the 281 Embarcadero Street.
Okay, watch it. This is a study session, so you can,
I had a couple of questions and then a comment. Was it the intent when you put the shingle siding on there to that to serve as a distinguishing feature from earlier construction and the original?
Yes, that was the intention.
That was the reason you put it on there?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing, when I look at these drawings, one of the things that jumps out right away is there's a lot of fencing that's on this drawing that does not appear to be originally in the plan. And that's one of the things that's going to be one of the big visual impacts, the fencing on it. And there's not much detail on that on the drawing. I don't know if it's just symbolically shown here. It's a bunch of vertical sticks, or do you have some other information you can provide us on what type of fencing you propose?
Not at the moment. It is actually not fencing. Those are the railings on the balconies in front of the sleeping porches that at the moment just very tall diagonal trellis pieces. So the railing at the bottom addresses actually the exit from the basement. This house has been badly neglected, and the structural engineer as well as the civil engineer who came on site have concluded that the basement of the building has to be completely, and the foundations have to be completely changed because the building is unstable and needs a complete revamp of the structural pieces. So the railing that you see on the ground level is actually railing of the exit from the basements.
Okay. Is that just symbolically shown, or is that
Yes,
what you
it is
propose?
symbolically shown, and you're welcome to suggest any type of railing that you would like to see there.
It looks like a picket fence right now when I look at it.
It's a small scale, but I'd be happy to make a detailed drawing of the fence if you request. And we are looking actually at the surrounded buildings for the fencing detail,
Yeah.
as we are trying to contribute to the neighborhood.
Well, the point I was trying to make is that's going to be one of a major visual impact, the railing of the fence, whatever you want to characterize it as. So I think that's an important feature that we need to know more about.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I may point out also that this will not, this railing will not be visible from the street at any point of time. It is all on the garden side of the house.
A question in terms of what the plan would be for the dense amount of growth that's around this house. Currently, there is a construction fence up, and then all you can see is this dense growth, and apparently that has been true for many years, even before the construction fence was put up. Is there some plan for what might happen with that?
Yes, we had both city arborists and professional arborists come on the site and give us complete review and suggestions for the trees and the shrubbery on the site. And the present fence is there because we had invasion of the homeless several times in the past, and that gained access to the building and attempted further destruction. So we had to put the fence around it to protect the entrances, because as I say, the house has been badly neglected throughout the years. It has been rental for the longest time, and it is impossible to really secure it unless we have fence around it. So both arborist and civil engineer have addressed all the issues of the property.
So you would be balancing the need for privacy on a very public corner and some ability to have some yard or have some space where the house could be seen a bit.
Yes, the arborist has designated the trees that absolutely have to be saved and protected. So the oak trees that are at the front and the side of Embarcadero would actually stay. Some of the shrubs next to the tall redwood tree on the Bryan Street would be removed because they are dead, but most of the greenery really will stay as protected by the arborist.
Thank you.
Have you gotten a survey of the property?
Yes, that was the first thing that we have done
It should
last
be,
year.
You know, it'd be nice to have had here. Because, I mean, you're going to have that, because the redwood trees and the oak trees, as you just talked about, and you're putting in a new basement, it's a pretty big deal how close you can get to those trees.
Yes, and that is actually the reason why we have the garage itself not rebuilt at the place where it is now. We are moving the garage further back because the arborist has requested to move it away from the redwood tree. May I point out that we are not moving the building at all. We are only replacing the foundation and the existing basement, and actually making the basement.
It's just that to do a basement now, we have a general contractor here, and I do basements all the time. You have to cut out away from the wall to have space 3 to 4 feet, depending on the whole, to build the wall. And so on this one side where you have this big tree, you're going to have to cut close to it. So you've got a lot of data to provide for everybody.
Yes, we completely understand that, and I have brought a set of drawings that address those issues, both the arborist and civil engineer view and the plans, if you'd like to see them.
Well, it's not really our purview in a sense, but
Yes,
we're just
yes,
curious
thank you.
about it.
You are pointing out to very important facts about the construction, and we have been very carefully examining them and addressing them.
Any other comments, suggestions? Martin?
Thank you, Chair Kohler, and welcome, Gordon. So,
Thank you.
And thanks for having our study session with us. The board tries to encourage that often. That way there's good decision-making may result from that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's just go through the main items. So as far as I agree with Board Member Beth's comment about having shingles on the sleeping porches. So I think that's a great way to help differentiate between what was original to the house and what was added at a later date. So I think I'm in support of that proposal. The divided lights on the front porch windows, I would think that would be, I would agree with that. Same reason, it's the front porch was added later to the original house according to the Sanborn maps. So I see that to be consistent with the shingles up above for the newer sleeping porches. As far as the guest house second dwelling unit exterior finish, proposal is for stucco to match the same stucco, well, to be also stucco as the main house. And thinking about if that were a different material such as shingle, I wonder if that would introduce a feeling of distraction to the main house, since it is a separate structure. And plus, the guest house is going to be a new structure, and so that's going to kind of show up in terms of any kind of details from 107 years ago. So I think that's enough differentiation. But I think from the feeling of the site, if the second dwelling were shingles or some other material, that might be a distraction, I think, to the historical aspect of the house. So I'm in support of the stucco that's proposed. One thing that I would ask the board and Gordon about, on page A1, if you look at the site plan, everyone turn to that page, A1, it shows the proposed stairs for the basement coming off the side of the house. And then if you look on page A5, it shows the stairs at the front-facing facade. We've reviewed several projects where we've had basements, and it's been our consistent advice or motion whenever it became a formal presentation to us that the stairs on the front-facing facade to a basement are not consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. Therefore, I would support and then even ask if the applicant, if she would consider going to page A1, showing the basement stairs not on the street-facing facade. So A1 I'm in support of for those basement stairs. A5 I would not be in support of that, based on the secretarial standards and what we've always used as precedent of what not to do on a front-facing facade. And then finally, as far as the rotation from the street-facing facade of switching the access to the entry, I'm in support of that because in terms of feeling, it's the same feeling for the historic house. And that sleeping porch wasn't original to the house anyway. So by switching it, I think that does not change the historical feeling of the house here. Those are my comments. But my main request is that the applicant to consider, and if you care to respond, that'd be great. As far as the basement access, to make it as sheet A1, I would deem that to be consistent with the Secretariat standards. A5, not consistent because it's changing a street-facing facade, having that basement there. Look forward to any comments to that. Thank you.
So Martin, just to understand, on A1, you're okay with that steps going down and the railing there, but on A5, which it's been switched, is a different. So it's more obvious that that's the stairs, is what you're saying, and it comes over in front of the existing house. Is that?
My comment is not to include a basement access stairway visible from the street-facing facade straight on as shown on A5, but to do it as shown on A1.
Okay, so it's a matter of interpretation. Is that the stairs are still facing the front, but they're not horizontally shown.
Correct, yeah. So
Okay,
my vote
right.
would be for sheet A1 and not A5 for the basement stair. So if the applicant is concerned, yeah.
Yes, we can definitely accommodate that, yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, your light's on. Did you want to?
Margaret's light was on.
Oh, Mark's first?
Oh,
I'll go after Margaret.
Okay.
okay. Yeah, also to continue what Martin was saying, I think it's important to recognize which is the legal front part of the property and which is the legal side. And I see, given the setbacks that you've noted, that acknowledges that the Embarcadero Road property line is considered the front.
Yes.
Even though the address is on Bryant, which that's the street side. So I think one of the Palo Alto planning ordinance guidelines is you can't have a light well or anything in the front anyway.
That is correct.
That's true.
So so that wouldn't be probably admissible. However, I don't know if it coming up this close to the front, I don't know if that's considered the front. I guess that's for planning to decide. But you also might look at, I mean, I know that there's a lot of guidelines about the length of the light wells, how sometimes it's considered an underground patio or a recessed patio element, which it looks like that's what you're maybe trying to do at that side and having a light well. The light well on the, I don't know what direction, this long one, I'm sure that there's guidelines saying a maximum length that looks kind of long.
Yes.
But I'm sure you're trying to get light in that basement to make it more livable. And then, I don't know, my packet is missing the proposed second floor plan, and it looks like you're making some additions to the second floor, notably on the garden side.
I'll be happy to give you the sheet.
It's
of the
okay. I mean,
second
I'm
floor.
kind of trying to figure out, given the elevations, but it looks like there's some additions to the building envelope on the second floor.
Actually, there is a bay window in the master bedroom on the west side of the building that is added, and there is 4 feet extended towards the existing balcony.
Right, and it looks like that bay window that faces that, or the roof line that
garden.
faces the garden, it
Yes.
expands. This roof element gets a little bit bigger in the proposed. And
Yes, that is right.
So when thinking about exterior surfaces, if you're expanding part of the second floor, would those surfaces have shingling as opposed to stucco? And I don't know, it might look too hodgepodge. I don't know. It seems like putting a little bit of shingling here and there might not give it a cohesive, successful look. Maybe what you could do is have the, have that pyramid, the square geometry of the original house. Maybe that could stay stucco, and then the additions, the sleeping porch additions that weren't necessarily truly original could be shingled, but then it's hard to make that line. It's hard to transfer because it's on the same wall surface.
It is very interesting that you're proposing that because we went through that
Sure.
part already, and I'd be happy to show you that addition. We've done it.
It just, I know that you'll develop that more, but it just, what you don't want it to look like is just accidental little pieces of wood siding, shake siding, because it'll look like, I don't know, maybe you're just trying to patch or repair something. Hopefully it will all look cohesive. And I know this house, and I drive by it many times, and I've always been concerned about, it looks like it's abandoned or something, so this is so nice that someone's going to make it beautiful. So.
May we see that? Do you have A6? Could we see that? We do not have A6.
A6, yes.
Chair Kohler?
Yes.
Permission to address the board?
Okay.
Just to clarify some of the elements that we're discussing, the projecting bay that's proposed to be expanded is original to the house. It's not an addition. It was original. That's shown in the oldest Sanborn that we have. So staff's recommendation would be that since it's an original feature, even though it's being expanded, to retain the existing stucco cladding and the existing materials of that particular feature, because it's not really a later addition. And so the idea of perhaps adding shingle to that particular component might actually result in that patchwork image that you were discussing. Staff isn't necessarily sure that would result by recladding the sleeping porches, because those are distinctive elements that are somewhat separate from the main building, and that was the idea there.
This is just an unrelated question. Does anyone know what is more historic? Is it the wood shingle siding, or is it stucco? Like I always look at shingle buildings and think that they look more historic and old, as opposed to stucco seems like a more contemporary, modern siding material. Does anyone have any, I need to research that, but does anyone have any thoughts on that?
We have a...
Just to again, clarify what the history of the building is. Stucco appears to be the original cladding for this building, so it would have been an early use of stucco, but a historic use of stucco, and that would be the historic material for this building.
David.
Good morning. Thank you for coming and enduring these unpleasant questions. I have a couple of things that you could just briefly talk about. curious to know what the condition of the existing windows is and how many, well, let me rephrase this. Is it your intent, your client's intent, to replace all the sash in the house?
I would like to do that because the wood has been rotting, and you're all welcome to come and visit the property. I have the access to it, and I'll be happy to show it to you. And I think it's important to see it. So there are leaks throughout the house through the windows. They have dried, and as I said, they have not been properly painted for quite a long time.
Okay.
So we would like to replace them with the double glazed windows, which would provide more of the sound protection from Embarcadero, and as well as more insulation. Keeping, of course, everything with the size and appearance of the building as it is now.
On page, thank you, on page A12 on the west elevation, the proposed elevation, there are what look to be 4 single light patio doors, but I can't find them on the floor plan. And maybe I'm just not looking at the right place.
Oh, so those doors are the Nana doors that you can find on the sheet proposed. Yes, they are folded on sheet 8.5 at the left bottom corner.
Right, I see. So there, actually, I see now there's just a big opening there, but there's no notation for doors.
Actually, the doors are folded on the side because those Nana doors open and fold on the side to leave access to the outside.
Do they actually fold, do they slide into pockets, or are they hinged?
No, they actually have hinges, and
Okay.
you fold them as you open them on the single track.
So, and I say this with all due respect, I have had a very difficult time analyzing this proposal because the typical details that we would see as a board, for instance, the type of windows, the what you're going to do with the overhangs, which are an important part of this building. We don't see any details on that. We're actually missing plan pages, which might have been for economy's sake, but certainly makes it hard for us to evaluate the second floor if we don't have the floor plan. The final rail design that Martin has brought up. And then I think, you know, again, the windows, I'm perplexed as to why that front entry hall has to suddenly have divided light windows when the style of the building is essentially either single light double hung windows, really that's the majority, except for the 2 sleeping porches, which are distinguished by that. But I don't see the addition of those divided lights to be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards. And actually, I'm troubled by the, to take a different approach than Martin does, I'm troubled by the shingles, because on the Pacific Art Building across the street, which is on the corner here, they had a very heavy dash stucco finish, and the way we differentiated or encouraged that project to differentiate the new addition from the old is to actually use the same material but a different finish, and I would find that to be more effective. I think introducing shingles that don't even exist on the building to be, it just feels odd to me, just as the divided lights in the front, in the first rooms. I am a proponent, as everybody on this board knows, of modern engineered glass. So I don't have a problem with insulated glass being installed because that protects the building from moisture and of course would provide sound attenuation and make it more efficient. All things that make these buildings last longer. That's a way of extending the life of an historic building. Unless of course you're going to add weird things in the windows. But again, this is information we don't have here. So I think my preference would be to have this project come back to us with the all the final details here. I mean, I don't know how we make a decision as a board or even recommend to the staff how they would.
This is a study session, so we don't.
I get it, but one of Matt's remarks was,
It didn't have to come back to us.
should it come back here?
Yeah,
And
well,
I
I
think
think so.
it absolutely should. I'm also, I have to say, troubled by the fact that there is a little bit of design modification on practically every part of this building, and so when I think of it in totality, the old building is just kind of disappearing to me. And I think it's actually a remarkable building in terms of how much of it is preserved. Now, it may be run down and need a lot of attention, but certainly attention is different than alteration of the original design. Moving, adding dormers, making dormers and bay windows bigger, the basement stairs next to the front entrance. I just find that to be kind of obnoxious, frankly. I mean, why would you walk up to your entry and see a basement stair next to it? Not my idea of good design. I'm sorry if that sounds critical, but so those are the kinds of things I'm thinking of. And I would have a very hard time supporting this project because it's it's a death by 1,000 cuts of this building. So I think it's possible to make a lot of the changes that your client wants, but I'd like to see those changes made with fewer sort of exterior alterations. That's pretty tough, I grant you, but that's just how I see the project.
May I respond?
Sure.
Thank you for taking time to look into the drawings. And if I may point out, we have not moved any dormers. We have not modified the elevations of the building on 3 sides at all. The only added part is the heat roof, which is facing the big redwood tree and would never be seen from the street. And as far as modifying the windows and openings, you may notice that there is a irregular window on the facade that has been added obviously later because it's not even showing on the interior. It is completely sheetrocked over on the interior of the house. So we've been trying just to rehabilitate the building to the best of the historic resources we found to what it was looked like before and accommodate the uses of the new client.
So let me just follow up by showing you the kinds of things. So I took your elevations, and on these elevations, I just marked the things from existing to new. In this case, all of these 3 windows completely go away. That's on A9.
Which sheet
I'm on A9.
Sorry.
Let me just go through this quickly. On A10, which is the east elevation, on the existing drawing, there are 2 small windows up on the 2nd floor. They go away. There is divided lights on the windows on the 1st floor porch on the left. There's a new pair of double-hung windows on the 2nd floor. And
I'm
railing.
sorry, I lost you. You on sheet A9 or
Yeah, well, that's
A10?
A10.
A10.
And on A11, of course, it's the front porch windows that are being changed. That's the least modified side of the building. And then on A12, again, if you look at the left-hand side of the drawing, the sleeping porch windows, the sleeping porch itself is completely changed. There's a 2nd floor single window, double-hung window here. It's now a double pair of double-hung windows. This window next to the fireplace chimney on the 2nd floor is moved on the lower one. And again, we have divided lights. So those, to me, are very small changes, but taken in totality, it's all sides of the building. It's not just one, as you suggest.
Yes, I would like you to see the building and notice that now on the new proposed facades, there is a rhythm and symmetry to it, which is missing from the existing because it seemed that had been amended and affected at some earlier modification that is not recorded. So we've been trying to keep the facade as consistent to the use and the interior of the building and what we think has happened sometime in the past. So as for the entrance to the basement, what is happening here, this is not the front entrance. The front entrance is now to the Bryan Street. This is the back of the house and the garden and is actually completely closed to the front entrance. That's where the stairs go to the basement. It's
Well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The existing front entrance, but whatever. So at any rate, those are my observations. They're just
Of
mine.
course.
I mean, there's 7 members, 6 other members of this board. But I just wanted you to hear my concerns. I definitely would like to see this come back to the board.
I'm definitely grateful for your input and, of course, shared experience, which you obviously have from previous reviews, and I appreciate the study session and you taking time to do that, of course.
Also, I want to make it very clear, I have no problem with basements under historic buildings. I think that's a very good addition to, it can be virtually unnoticed and provide an owner with added space without significantly impacting the historic character of a building. You just have to be careful about the exterior access to the basement. At any rate.
I have a quick comment on the garage, the new garage. You have it right on the property line. And I have really past experiences with this situation. And to build that garage the way you've got it, it's on page A1. The required height inside the garage is like 7 feet 6. You have a daylight plane that starts at, I think it's 8 or 9, 8, I think it's only 8 feet. And to get that height in the garage is very difficult. Also, you have to build the wall on the ground and build it and you lift it in place because you have this other garage right next to it. It's kind of a maintenance nightmare. You've got water from your garage going on the other garage. The other garage is going to dump water on you. I think you're going to find technically that you need to pull it away 2 to 3 feet to actually be able to build that and have it used, because it's the one home we did, they built the wall on the ground, lifted in place, and the neighbor made it very clear to the owner that there's no way he would ever let you come on his property to maintain the wall of the garage. He was very unhappy. So,
excuse me, Chair Kohler, thank you. Just to let everyone know that during the building permit review process, things like light well sizes and placements, garage placements, final locations of structures, that will all be checked and verified. Structural plans will be looked at. So really what we're looking from the HRB is input on design, architectural design.
well, my point is
Thank
the
you.
garage is shown where it is now, and if it pulls it out away, it's a different location, which has an impact on the overall look of the site. So I'm just trying to clarify that that's, I mean, they can physically do that. Sometimes there's a concrete block wall they put in, and then they put the garage up next to it. So that's a different look. So I'm just trying to say that it's not going to look like this if, in the end, when they go through the building department.
And is it true that the garage for 1200 Bryant is also right on the property line?
According to probably the survey. So it's right next door.
A1 right next to what you
Yeah,
were talking?
it's right next door.
Oh,
Squirrel can get in there.
oh, sounds like a problem.
Okay. Is there any other summary comments or anybody would like to?
I just have one additional comment here. I know my colleague here talked about favoring modern windows. I'd like to go back to Secretary of the Interior Standard Number 6, deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than be replaced. Sometimes in these old buildings we find that the glass has a certain degree of patina or waviness to it that is character defining, and I would encourage you to consider repairing where possible rather than totally replacing it. I'm sure some of these windows have that historic patina to it that adds to the character of the property.
And I would concur with that thought as well.
I would also like to add that I agree with David about there's, to me, no real compelling reason why you change to 8/1 instead of the original structure. We're all just double hung windows. And it sounds like the intent is to move a lot of windows around, like even the two sleeping porches look like they have two different treatments. And I don't know where the nano doors, they're not going to be viewed to the public. They're quite not probably in keeping with the age of the building.
So the sleeping porches actually currently have two different window designs because they were added at different times. And I believe the proposal is to retain both of those window designs in both of the sleeping porches. The sleeping porch at the interior is proposed to be reconfigured in a way that would allow for patio or deck access, and the windows would be relocated from their existing side locations around to the front in order to make that sleeping porch more usable, essentially. So the proposal is to retain and reuse those materials in a way, and those elements in a way that would allow for the building to be rehabilitated, basically.
And I would welcome, and I appreciate that you're saying that we could possibly, it is impossible really. I tried driving by there and you really can see nothing. And it would be nice to be able to actually view the building. Appreciate that.
I'll be happy to make arrangements to take you all there as soon as this afternoon if you'd like to.
Quite an elaborate project, and
Go ahead.
it looks like it's going to be saved, which is really the main issue here, too.
Yes.
Yes.
I have one further, I don't know, question or comment, but is it within the purview of this board here to consider landscape plans as far as impacting the historic character of the property?
It's within the purview of the board to really comment on any exterior aspect of a historic property.
I think that's an important feature. Sometimes these things are encased in a wall that completely obliterates any visual impacts that the property presents to the public or the neighborhood. So I think this whole thing on the landscape features should be part of our responsibilities, because they are tied to the property.
It is an element that the HRB can comment on, to the extent that the building or the planning codes apply to landscape. We would look back at our codes to determine what those requirements are. But the purpose of HRB review under the ordinance is to provide advice to owners on exterior elements of the properties.
The landscaping is part of the total package, if you want to consider it from the totality of the project.
One last comment for staff, I guess, is the 24-foot setback on Embarcadero is a required setback the entire length of Embarcadero, I understand, or at least a good part of it. So it's not really defining it. So I'm just questioning, is the Bryan Street the official front? In other words, should that be the 20-foot setback and Embarcadero is irrelevant? I don't know. I'm asking because I'm working on a project up the street, so. No, it isn't. No.
So it's
Because I have a project just 3 blocks up, and we have 24-foot on Embarcadero, and then on Newell, it's also 20 feet. So it's not always automatic that way. I just found this out, so.
So just to clarify, if you're seeing the standard front setback is 20 feet on single-family homes?
Yes.
So if you're seeing 24, that is a special setback, and those are special setbacks are designated for certain streets.
No.
So that special setback is on Embarcadero, no matter if it's the front or the side.
That's what I'm saying. It's the 20. I'm wondering whether or not, in fact, the Bryan Street is not the front.
The special setback doesn't change the front.
No,
the front is the shorter
I totally
side.
understand that, but it's an existing setback. I'm just saying on Bryan Street, normally you go down the street, Bryan is the front setback. And it's because of this funny shape, I'm just seeing if there's.
Well,
Not that it
Historically,
matters because it's an existing house. So
historically, the property has been addressed as Embarcadero, so I believe Embarcadero has historically been seen as the front elevation of the property.
It's totally up to the zoning department. It has nothing to do, if this was an empty lot, where would be the front and side yards? So I'm
From a
saying
zoning perspective, Embarcadero is the front of
because
the
of the
property
shape. Because of the shape.
because it is the shorter side.
Yeah, okay. Good. Okay, any other comments or anything? Well, this is, we'll look forward to seeing everything, and if you could, when you come back, I assume she's going to come back, we'll be seeing this again or not? Because that was part of the, do we know that?
Do we need an A6? Is there an A6?
Well, it'd be,
Yes, thank you. The second-story floor plan was unfortunately not provided in time to make it for the packets, so I do apologize for that. We'll make sure that the board has complete plans next time it looks at the application. Staff has taken detailed notes on all the comments that the HRB has provided. Thank you very much, and you will be seeing this project again.
Yeah,
Great.
one-
put on your microphone,
Whether the neighbor was informed about this meeting, and to comment that I think the guest house is a particularly nice design. It's set back enough from the next house, in my understanding of what property owners would appreciate, and it is much lower. I think it is a nicely designed project.
And,
I'd like
just
to
to,
make,
just,
one
I'm sorry,
further
just to answer your question, there was no notification required to neighbors on this one, or actually for any HRB project. There's no requirement for notification to neighbors for an HRB hearing. Yes,
The
That is-
origin.
yes, that's correct.
I'd like to make one further recommendation, that when we receive a packet like this, that we each receive a set of the good quality photographs, such that one set went around here, but we need to have a good set for each of us. And it's a very minimal cost to get those things reproduced, such that they're legible. We're really handicapped. We have to look at something that's, dark smudges on a piece of paper.
okay. I think that brings us to a conclusion on this item. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you again, we hope. And,
Thank you for your
Good
time.
luck with your project.
Thank you.
That's a big project, so. Okay, we then move
Need a
on.
motion to have
No,
it
it's just
come back or not?
no, it's a discussion. Whoops.
We haven't done minutes approval.
Yeah, I'm looking for my official list here. We didn't, yeah, we kind of skipped over and didn't do approval of minutes. So any comments on the minutes that we're about to approve?
I move approval of the minutes from September 24th, 2015.
Second.
And
We'll all
It's
second it.
been motion to approve the minutes that have been presented to us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes with everyone voting yes. Okay, so then we have minutes, public hearing, we didn't have any cards, study session, board items, 2014-2015 certified local government CLG annual report. Review of the annual report prepared by staff. Final reports are due to the Office of Historic Preservation, HOP, on January 15th, 2016. So, staff, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. So the CLG report has been provided to you in your packet. It basically just summarizes the activities that have occurred over the past year. Staff would welcome any corrections, clarifications, or additions that are necessary before the report is transferred. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying to, okay, here we go. Did anyone take a look at this to see if it, I mean, it looks to me like it's pretty,
Absolutely, I memorized it.
okay, good. What happened on the date of,
I would like to commend the board for its attendance. It's pretty impressive, except for some reason nobody was at the August meeting. I don't really understand that, but.
Maybe we didn't have one.
I think this looks good, Matt. I don't know, I mean, it seems to me we, as a board, meet all the qualifications, and is there any other directive
we
that
may not
we're
have had a
looking for?
meeting in August.
We didn't have any meetings in August.
Yeah,
no.
okay.
That's why none of us made it.
Oh, I see, okay.
Is that, are we just, this is just for a review, comment?
Yes, it is.
It's actually a pretty handy summary as I'm looking here to, you know, the overall review. Pretty good attendance for a lot of the board members but it's kind of a nice packet. Actually, for me who, yeah, this is very, very good. Okay, so, yes?
I have a correction that I have also handed to Matt, and that is that one training session that I attended, that one, the district design and infill up at Pier 70 in 2 places that needs to be added. And then I had a question on, and I think it probably transpired after the cutoff for this particular year, but I wondered whether we needed to report, actually it was a loss from our inventory of the little Mellish cottage on College.
Yes, thank you. So technically, that property was not actually removed from the inventory.
Because
There was no
approve
actual
it.
action taken to remove it from the inventory, so it's not, it's not being reported
Not
as.
there anymore.
Correct.
And also I would like to comment on that I thought that Matt did an amazing job of showing a way that the property could be saved. And that's the reason I think the board voted the way it was, to make sure that the woman understood that there was a way. So thank you, Matt.
Chair Kohler?
Yes.
May I ask Matt a question? Matt, I was also at that infill, Pier 70 infill. We only need one. Is it important to have all of our training, or all of our outside training listed?
It's not necessary to list them all. One is required, and I think one is sufficient, but I can certainly list, you know, as many of the trainings as board members have attended and that want to be listed, and I'll certainly add Board Member Bundenberg's additional training.
Yeah, well, I was there too, so.
Okay.
Is this a yearly or?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, so that is the one. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
So is this,
I went to 2 this year. I don't.
how often is it required to attend something like this?
Once a year. There's a annual training requirement.
So this summary is just for 1 year?
Yes, this is for the year
14.
October 1st, 2014 to September 30th, 2015.
Okay.
That's the CLG.
Because we did go to the Stanford event, but that was before October.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
That probably wouldn't qualify as a training. That would be more of an event, but probably wouldn't actually qualify as CLG training.
Well, it was a 2-day event on, at Stanford campus.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you were referring to the CPF awards for some reason.
Oh, okay.
So yes, if it occurred after September 30th of this year, we would be reporting
Yeah,
it at the next.
All right.
At
Well,
the
that's
next
good to
one.
know. Good. Okay. So, study session board members. Professorville Historic Guidelines update. Any update on that?
Yes, thank you. So just to update the board on the happenings, a consultant was selected. Page and Turnbull is the consultant that was selected to prepare the the final historic design guidelines. We're currently in the process of finalizing the contract with Page and Turnbull in order to get the work kicked off, and we expect to be able to kick off that work in the next few weeks. And we anticipate that there'll be some research and some field work that staff and the consultant will do. We anticipate that the board and the public will be engaged, or I should say re-engaged on this project in the new year, probably in January or February is when there'll be a formal re-engagement of the board and the community on this particular project. So please look forward to that.
Just as a personal insert here, Page and Turnbull, Bill Turnbull, was one of my visiting critics at the University of Oregon when we were in architecture school, and so it was kind of interesting to see. He was quite a guy. So, okay, retreat, January 28th. You want to give us data?
Thank you. So we're proposing that the annual board retreat occur on January 28th. If we do have an agenda item, or if we do have items discussed or prepared to discuss at that point, we can schedule it for another date if necessary. But you know, if staff or if the board is amenable to January 28th, we will go ahead and schedule that.
What day of the week is that?
So that would be a typical standard HRB meeting date, which would be a Thursday.
Okay.
And so, so the idea is to develop an agenda for that particular meeting, as well as this would be an opportunity for us to look back at the work program that the HRB and the council have developed together, and there's a report in your packet referring to that. And so the idea is that we can perhaps do a couple things. We can look at the work program one last time, and then staff is preparing to transmit that work program to the council. And so, you know, perhaps the items on the work program provide a basis for us to discuss what might be further discussed at the retreat.
So how long is this going to last? I mean, do you have that time?
The retreat?
Yeah.
Probably 2 to 3 hours.
During the day?
It would probably occur in the typical HRB meeting time. It would start at 8:30 on the Thursday of January 28th, which is a scheduled HRB meeting time. So the, you know, it would essentially take the place of the regular meeting.
Okay. Yes.
I have some things that I would like to suggest around topics for that retreat. Part of it is due to the recent project on University at 429 University that the council sent back to us, and I think that it brought forward again the thought that which project should we see? It turns out the council sent it to us, but whether we should see ARB projects that have local historic inventory properties adjacent to them, across the street. What is that sphere? It would have been a lot more helpful had we seen that project early. So I'd like to recommend that to the board as one kind of thing. And the other thing that we've been discussing is the matter of our inventory. And the recent 90th anniversary of the Cardinal Hotel, and a chance to look to see how well a family has really protected that building, has restored it very sensitively on the outside and the inside. And the Cardinal Hotel is a Category 3, and it was really a cornerstone in trying to stretch business so we didn't become a one-horse, one-street, Main Street. And so I think that we need to look, I know we've talked about perhaps having just two categories, and they like major buildings and minor buildings, but I think that we need to look particularly, and I'd like to recommend that the board look at the inventory and see what some of the things are that are called Category 3. There really are some significant buildings that are Category 3. So those would be my suggestions.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I have another suggestion for agenda for the retreat. Picking up on Board Member Bunnenberg's comment about the downtown, to actually have a discussion more about what's compatibility and differentiation for new proposed buildings in the downtown area, if it's in the sphere of historic structures. City Council members have commented sometimes about prescriptive versus subjective interpretation of building codes and planning codes. And so the question of compatibility and differentiation often comes up in the public arena. So I think it'd be good for HRB to discuss that during an agenda, during a retreat.
Okay. Okay. So the retreat's on the 28th, and will it be here, or we go over to the community center, or just to be decided, I guess?
Probably to be determined, but we will probably have it in the community room as we did last year.
Oh, yeah. That's right. We have that community room there, which unless otherwise postponed. Okay, so then it says...
So I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair Kohler. I just want to ask the board if they have any further or last comments on the work program that's been summarized by staff. You have seen this information before, but this has been, I guess, re-encapsulated one more time prior to staff transmitting it to the council. So this would be your opportunity to provide any further comments or clarifications prior to that.
You mean right now or within the next week or so?
Staff is asking for that now.
Martin?
Thank you, Chair Kohler. Thank you, Matt. On the work program, item number 3, Professorville Historic Design Guidelines. As fast as possible, if there's a way to get that before, however the process, as fast as the process can be, to get that before council for them to vote on approving it.
Yeah, I mean,
I
sort
think
of
it
looking.
looks
What
like
are you
a
looking
good-
at, Martin?
good work
I'm
plan.
looking at attachment A of item number 4, the work program. Page 2. Actually, it says page 1 of 2.
So the current project schedule is that particular work product would be completed by fall of 2016. It would be due to OHP by September 30th of 2016.
Well, you lost me. I'm not finding it. So. Okay, number 4.
Matt, does the order of these items have any impact upon anything?
No, they're not really ordered in priority. They're ordered. I think they're ordered in a way that ideally there's a connection between the items as you read through. That one sort of connects to the other. That was the idea, anyway.
Well,
let me just say, I'd put number 2 down at the bottom. That's a mandated requirement, it seems to me to be no priority, really. I know this isn't prioritized, but there is a sense when you read a list that's numbered that number one is the, obviously the first thing and most important on the list, and the last one would be least. I don't think I would actually like to see number 9 as number 1. I mean, preservation incentives are something we desperately need, but that's, so I don't know if they're.
So I think perhaps removing the numbering would be a solution to that.
Good idea. I think that's a good, well, yeah, and then they'll say, oh, the third one down on, not being critical, just
perhaps we'll add Roman numerals.
Okay. So is that enough for that? So the item that says election of officers.
I'm sorry, if I may, I just might comment that the council also may have some input on prioritizing or ordering them as well, and we'll certainly report back to you on that.
Okay.
Well, I would think that it might be helpful for the council if the board prioritized them and let the council know what we think is important, because our current mayor has made it very clear several times that she would like to hear what we think is important. So I think it could be useful in both directions.
So if you're suggesting we arrange the order of events here to actually have a meaning in terms of importance?
I think to the board, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Just our vision of what we think is most important.
So if you switched at 9 and went backwards.
No. No. I was just saying that's one
I'm just saying
my
maybe
priorities,
it wouldn't work out that way. I mean, it's pretty random if it did. Okay, so other board members, the suggestion is to right now rearrange this order.
Actually, I'm not suggesting we do it now. I mean, we have a month. I'd like to actually think about this.
Okay.
Is that something we have time to do? Are we going to have another meeting?
Staff is planning to transmit this information soon to the council. So we're actually asking for input now at today's meeting. It's on the agenda. I would just note that number 1, public outreach and education, is an important component of all the other items. And so staff did put that as number 1. CLG program actually does relate to some of the other items as well. It's kind of an umbrella program, and so staff decided that that was appropriate for number 2. Number 3 is the most current project that staff is working on under the CLG program, so that was placed as number 3. Number 4 would be the next year's CLG proposal, at least currently, so that's why that's in that order. Survey updates may follow in future years, based on CLG grants and based on community input, as well as a historic inventory update may again follow in subsequent years. And then the last 3 items don't necessarily follow the pattern of the previous items, but so they're just sort of added onto at the end in terms of long-range programs. So that was staff's, thought in terms of putting it together. So.
Well, I think my first thought is that for the average person and impact in Palo Alto, as David just said, I think preservation incentives is probably would trump certified local government in a sense for importance of the local citizen. I would think most citizens they have no idea what certified local government is anyway, but they would know what preservation incentives are, and I think that's, in terms of order of importance, I think that's what David's trying to say. I think is that.
So okay.
It doesn't really impact how we look at the items. When we go to have a meeting, we can pick each one we want, but I think in terms of importance to the average Palo Alton, I think the incentives are pretty important.
So that should be number 2? Is that what I'm hearing? Or? Okay.
One comment I like to make is we go through this about once a year,
yep.
And we say preservation incentives and the Mills Act, like we're not supposed to even speak about it in years past. And so we're back to square one in some of these incentives, which are very important to the people who are buying houses in Palo Alto at the tax rate and structure and the, you know, it's, but I don't know, in the last 5 years, nothing's changed. That we don't really discuss it, or we discuss it with the city council. And another, for instance, is we met, and, you know, it was really very important when we came up with the 429 building, the building that was going to go up. I don't know, do we get feedback on that? In other words, I think the comments that came out of that were, wow, there's this many, you know, Burge Clark buildings surrounding this project, and I don't know if we end up getting any feedback from how the city council, you know.
Well, your input was conveyed to the city council. So that's, you know, not to get into a discussion on a totally other matter, but your input was conveyed.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm hearing is number 9 should be moved to number 2.
So could I make a comment? I'm happy to leave this just the way it is, as long as the council knows this is not the way we would prioritize it, that we have a different idea. I don't think that's going to be relevant to the discussion. I just want some kind of disclaimer that says these are the things that are important to the HRB. They're not necessarily in the order of importance that we would assign them.
Yeah.
And if they say that, then I think they're all important. I'm looking at the list and thinking,
Yeah.
well, you know, historic inventory update is a really important thing that we should have to use as a tool to make decisions, but is that more important than preservation incentives?
So the HRB has the opportunity to reorder them now, or to request that the council address priorities when they review the items, or to remain silent. And so I'm asking you, what is your
Well, I
desire?
think a simple thing might be just says recommended historic preservation work program. No, what, how do you?
In the coming year. I mean,
No, but just say order of, not necessarily an order of importance or something like that.
You could put a disclaimer in there that it's not prioritized.
Yeah, that's all. I think that.
I certainly understand, Matt, your reasons for ordering it this way, and I guess I'm comfortable with that. I don't think I think it makes sense, but I wouldn't want the council to think that our most important priority is public outreach. That's important in every single board and commission in the city, and I don't think we do a very good job of that, but I mean, we as a community, not as this board.
So I can think back that this is my 20th year of being on this board, and same list 20 years ago. So, okay. I mean, I think David's right. I'm not sure we have to spend time today doing it.
And I think that our ordinance needs to be amended or changed in some ways, but that's a long road, but something we need to think about to get started even.
I have one modest little comment that I think the fact that we have an important person here now guiding us, yes, you, has been a big improvement, because in the past there's never been a specific historic board person. And since they've all been planners who have helped out in ways, and this has been a big, for Matt to be here has been a big help.
Thank you. I take my guidance from the board, and you know, I try to assist the board, and I very much appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay. Having said that, we're just going to move on and vote for, is that on the agenda? It says election of new officers. I think it says, yes, number 5. So, go ahead, Beth.
I would like to nominate Margaret Wimmer for the new, our new leader and our chair. So I think that Margaret has learned very rapidly what is going on with the board, and her comments have been extremely to the point, and so I would like to nominate her.
Don't you want to be?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Oh, okay.
I would actually like to nominate Martin Bernstein to be the chair for this coming year, simply because I feel like I would like to have another year under my belt before I take on that position. I feel like every meeting I still learn profound, important things, and I'm not 100% comfortable just speaking, I think, so that's my one. I have to work on that a little bit, so maybe if I have another year under my belt, I would be more prepared at that time. But, and I greatly appreciate you, Beth, for nominating me. But in turn, I would like to nominate Martin because I think he has done a remarkable job in the past. He has a lot of great experience. He's a good public speaker, and he always has a teaching element to his responses and presentations. So I would like to nominate Martin.
I'd second that.
Are you up for that, Martin?
Margaret, would you be up for being the vice chairman?
Okay.
Well, I would like to nominate Margaret Weimer to be the vice chairman behind the election of Martin.
So do we vote for each one individually? Or
Sorry,
is
is there a
group?
second? Is there a second to Board Member DiCicio's motion?
DeCicco.
Sorry, I have a hard time with your name. I don't know why. DiCiccio.
DeCicco.
DiCiccio.
Yes, I would second that motion.
Now we have 3 motions on the floor.
We have all kinds of motions.
No, so first motion was Margaret, Beth's motion, and then Margaret said she didn't want to be the chairperson. So then,
So I believe appropriately there needs to be an action on the first motion, either a vote or some other type of action. Though, yeah, withdrawal could be an option if, Margaret's indicated she.
I will then withdraw mine out
Okay.
of deference to Margaret's presence.
Okay.
Next motion on the floor is nomination of Martin Bernstein as chair.
There's been a motion on the floor for Martin Bernstein to be the next chairman of the board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I don't see anything saying no. Okay, thank you. You are now the upcoming, did I say president? And we've also had a motion now for Margaret Wimmer to be the vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, so we now have new chairman and vice chair. And not that it's historic of interest, I just saw on my phone, it says John Madden has had open heart surgery. He is 79.
Yes.
it's an historic property.
Well, he is. He's on KCK, he's on the radio every morning. And anyway, okay.
I just had a quick question regarding the elections. When does that take place? In January?
That's it.
That would be
We just did
effective at the next meeting. Yes.
Yep, you are now vice chair.
And the next meeting is what?
I have just a question, and I don't know if anyone else on the board has noticed this. There is I emailed you about this about a couple of months ago, the property at 1030 University Avenue. It's on the inventory as a Category 3. It's actually pictured on the inventory. And there is some word about the street that it's going to possibly be demolished. And is there anything that
What
we
was
can?
that address?
I think it's 1030. It's a very unique
1030,
Spanish
what
revival
street?
Mediterranean. University Avenue.
Is it one story?
Yep.
Yep. There's no control.
Very, very original, very good condition. I actually was going through the property when they had an open house, and I heard the realtor saying, "Oh yeah, they can tear this house down because it's only a Category 3." I mean, knowing that it was a historic property, but
So we can certainly check and see if there is an application in for that property. If there's not, then we really don't have any other information. I mean, you know, there may be sales occurring, you know, there may be discussions occurring, but the city is not always privy to those. But we could certainly check and find out if there is an actual formal application.
But I think unfortunately that's right, that Category 3s are not really protected.
Well, a Category 3 building is a CEQA historical resource, so if there's a discretionary application that is required, then CEQA review would apply. But a Category 3 building that's not located in either downtown or a historic district is not subject to HRB review, according to the municipal code. So.
Okay, so is everything, that's it. Thank you very much. Interesting meeting. See you again in 2 weeks or a week, 3 weeks?
So the January 14th meeting will be, it looks like at this point it'll be canceled. We don't have any applications that are ready to go at January 14th, and with the holidays and the time off before that, it would be, might be difficult to have a meeting for very little purpose. So with the board's permission, we would cancel the January 14th meeting and next meet on January 28th, which would be the retreat.
Okay. We are adjourned.